The primary difference between the Hifil imperfect and the Kal imperfect is the ptak under the prefix pronoun. Now there's of course a secondary indicator with the Hirik Yod, but this is an unreliable indicator, so I'd encourage you, don't worry about the Hirik Yod so much, because it'll only be there sometimes, whereas very consistently there'll be a ptak under the prefix pronoun. And then the basic sense of the Kal imperfect, he will kill. For the Hifil imperfect, it's he will cause to kill. And of course the Hofal, very minor stem, but it's the passive of whatever the Hifil is. So in this case, he will be caused to kill. Now you'll notice, looking at the Hifil imperfect, that all of the different conjugations with the different pronouns all have the ptak under the prefix pronoun. So this is a very consistent way to be able to determine that it's a Hifil. Now in most cases there's a Hirik Yod in the imperfect, but in two cases there's not. That's with the 3FP and the 2FP. However, there'll be other cases where the Hirik Yod drops out as well. That's why I suggest you don't worry about that as an indicator. Now the other thing to notice, just as we always do, is here you'll see all of the prefix pronouns and the suffixes from the Kal imperfect are exactly the same on the Hifil. So that part we need to have good in our memory. The yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktoli, ektol, yiktalu, tiktolana, tiktalu, tiktolana, niktol. Have that well in our mind, and then be aware of the indicator of the ptak under the prefix pronoun for the Hifil. Now one other thing to take notice of is what happens when we go to the Vav consecutive imperfect. Now in the Kal, we have a fairly straightforward yiktol, he will kill, to vayiktol, and he killed. And for the Vav consecutive imperfect, we simply add a Vav, ptak, and a dagesh. Now in the case of the Hifil, in the imperfect we have yaktil. He will cause to kill. Now in the Vav consecutive imperfect, we have he will cause to kill. However, notice it's not just the Vav, ptak, dagesh put on the front, but we also have a change in the second part of the word, the collapsing of the Hirik Yod into a tsere. And this is called a pakapation or reduction, where the Hirik Yod is reduced, in the case of a Vav consecutive imperfect, to a tsere. And that's why it's important not to count on the Hirik Yod, because it changes to a tsere. Therefore, we need to use the ptak under the prefix pronoun to show us that it's not a Kal, it's a Hifil. Here you'll notice an example from Deuteronomy 19. Shalosh arim tavdil lach. 3 cities you will divide for yourselves. So the word tavdil, as we can see, this is a Hifil. It's imperfect, and it's 2ms. You will divide. And we have both of the normal indicators, ptak under the prefix pronoun, and the Hirik Yod in between the ayin letter and the lamed letter. Now Genesis 1:4, Vayabdel Elohim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech. subject is God, and God separated or divided between the light and between the darkness. So here we have a verb to parse, and we'll do the easy part first. We can see that it's Vav, consecutive, imperfect, and we can see that it's 3ms, because we have a very consistent situation with that, and so that part's easy. Then we can see that there's a patak under the prefix pronoun, therefore this is a Hifil. And what's different here is the Hirik Yod, which we expect, isn't there because it's apocryphated in the Vav consecutive imperfect form. So therefore you can see there's a different way of how it looks between the Hifil imperfect and the Hifil Vav consecutive imperfect. And that's something just to be aware of. But the main point here is to use the patak under the prefix pronoun as the indicator for the Hifil, whether we're talking about the imperfect or the Vav consecutive imperfect.